Hello, well, now I got this 2005 Grand Marquis here, and the odometer is not working. Speedometer is, but not the odometer or the trip gauge. So there's something in there wrong that has gone wrong, obviously. I'm gonna go in there and figure out what it is to fix it. I don't have a part right now because I'm not just gonna order random parts to fix it when I don't know what it is. I'm gonna show you how to get to it, and we're gonna figure it out. Now, to get the gauges out, as you can see, it's surrounded by this bezel, which means we're going to have to pull most of this off in order to get to it. Now, you can use a flathead or your hands. Just carefully pop and wiggle that loose. And there's actually one thing plugged up here, even though there's nothing here on this car. And you can see, right here it is. We'll push and pull and release. Now, same thing here. And I'm going to pull carefully as I go along. Now, it doesn't hurt to take a flathead and go down through here and go ahead and pop some of that loose. As you see, let's do this number right here. Kind of wiggle it loose a little bit. That one's got a little peg right here that you just kind of pull out a little bit. But now we got, on this one I got just one plug in down here, which is right here on this one. And we will attempt to do that by hand. Might be difficult because it's right there. There, okay. Now with that out of the way, we got access to our 7mm bolts. There's a couple more over there. And then two up under here, one there, you can see. So we got that one and that one removed, that one, and then those right there. So now we can pull this out. Obviously we're gonna have a little bit of wiring right here to deal with. I'm just gonna kind of carefully, there we go. Obviously the radio, but not a big deal. So come over here, pull that. Cool. And see if I can do this a little bit better. There. Now for me, it's going to be easier this way. I kind of lift it up on this side and very carefully got this right here and that right there around this large section of the steering column so that I can actually get a little more space to get and deal with the radio. As you can see, there's a tab there. Should be one on the other side right there. You can pop that out, pop those, and then push it out. It is kind of a pain to deal with, but that's the next step. I am going to go ahead and wiggle it out like this. And then reach back behind here. And unplug it this way. There are 3 connectors holding it on. Now I am aware some of y'all may not want to do this just for the simple fact that you can break your dash. Fully aware of that, and I respect that decision. Like I said, there's the 2 clips on each side that you're supposed to be able to push and it come through, and me, that wasn't happening. So now we gotta dig further. For those that want to pull the radio out, show you how it's supposed to be done. It's going to be a lot easier to show you outside the car anyway. So honestly, just kind of push that side in a little bit, get it started, and then theoretically you should be able to get the other side and push both in, or push that prong in and push it through. Sometimes easier said than done when you're doing it in there like that. Now to remove said gauge cluster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 millimeters is all I see holding this one on. But right here, we can go ahead now and actually unplug the cluster just right there. Which now gives me a little bit more room to do this and unplug the other half. So we're going to take a T15 and remove the clear plastic first. So there's 4 screws on top and 2 on the bottom, so we can get the clear plastic off. And we'll have to do the same thing with this black piece of plastic here that covers the gauges on the inside. And while we got that, we can go ahead and clean that plastic and make it look real good anyway. Now that that's off, most screws are off. Now we just got these 2 and these 2 right here to take off. Then we can pull this off. Now with those screws off, it just comes right off. There's a tab on each end, and you can just pop it off like that. Now we can get to the rest of it. Now, I'm going to carefully wiggle these loose. Kind of slowly and carefully work it loose, because we don't want to damage anything, because what we need to get into is behind here, and I need to check, see if the gears are all still intact. And there's these 2 right here. Maybe we can push on. I'm trying to grab here and here on that clear plastic. Yeah, it's like that. Then what I'm going to do, very carefully, take these 3 little screws out so I can actually see what's going on. Like I'm almost there. And what I have is a 3/16. And these things are not very tight because you would crack stuff. So keep that in mind. Put Bill. Okay, so here's my original. Everything moves freely. Everything's good. There's no broken teeth on the gears. Fair and simple enough. I'll show you how to pull the motor out on the other one real quick, or once I get this taken apart. Same procedure. I bought an extra part stash. It's felt to work. Now, if you got a gear messed up, you can buy the gears. You can buy this little spiral gear. I just couldn't find a place to buy the motor, so I bought another instrument panel. And of course, changing the gears, you're probably going to have to pop that off, the little motor off, and then you can actually start taking the gears out. But right now, all I need to replace is the motor. So I'm going to tear this thing apart and then show you how to take the motor out of it. And then it's really simple to put in. Alright, now you see we got our donor opened up. So here it is. Now, you see these two little metal flanges? There's two right up here. And you can tell that they're held on via a clip here. And you can kind of pull it back a little bit. But the other one is right there. It's going to be a little hard to grab. So what I do, a little pick tool, is I put it between the metal and the plastic to open it up. On the inside here. That way, all I have to do is pull back on this one and twist it loose. And then to put it back into this one, it'll take a second because of gear. You want to get it turned just right, so you can just twist it back in. Pretty simple. Now we can put this back apart the way we took it apart. Now I do suggest when tightening these down, got the little 3/8, the tiny one. I do not grab by the handle. I am doing it right here with a couple fingers on the head of the ratchet. That way when I feel it snug down, it's done. Because we don't want to crack any of that plastic. Now we're going to put the needle back on, which is pretty simple. Line it up. Just press it back on. Now, to put the speedometer back in the gauge cluster it came out of, I'm going to take our little speedometer here. Just gently push it down. It'll pop right into place. Same thing with the oil pressure and our temperature gauge. Right there. And fuel and voltage. Right back there. It's pretty simple. They got these flat edges right here, so you can't really mix them up. And bolts have 2-prong. Both these have 3-prong. They only go in one way. Speedometer just goes in first. Now, because of the way I took it apart, which I'm sure some people are saying, well, why didn't you take it apart different? Well, when I bought this one, they did. They took it off with that intact, actually still attached to the gauge cluster, which is fair. You can do that by pulling apart the column, pulling out one screw, and taking off the cable from the shifter. You can do that. But since I was going to have to tear apart into this anyway, I didn't want to tear into more. I'm going to try to pull apart the bare minimum of the car as possible. So now, I'm going to put this in the car and then test it real quick to make sure that it actually works. Alright, so you can see I drove it just a little bit because I didn't have much room to drive it. Just over there and back a few times. That actually started moving, so we're good now. It was dead set on 0 because I'd restarted it from the get-go, and it moved. So test it, we're good. Now, one thing to be careful on is putting the needle back on and make sure it's at absolute 0. One trick is you don't have to put the needle on before you put it in. You can plug it all up, start it up, and it'll spin back where it should be at 0. And that's what I did. Of course, you're going to want to drive it and check it and make sure that the speedometer is accurate as well, just in case. But sometimes you may have to, like if you're up here at 30, well, you're probably, you just got it pointed wrong. So you pop it off and set it back in. Now that I've tested it, I'm just gonna put it all back together. Make sure it's set up right. Then put our 4 screws that hold it on the sides just like we took out. Now with that out of the way, we're gonna reinstall our indicator for what gear we're in. Now we'll just slide that in, reinstall the bezel around it. Now it's time for our nice new, or not new, but cleaned up plastic cover. Remember, you're only putting the 4 bolts in at the bottom, or screws in the bottom that holds the bezel in. The 4 on top are for this one and that one together. And then we have 2 in the bottom for this to attach to the bezel. All right, now put this bezel back on. What I'm going to go ahead and do is make sure plug these in right here real quick. You know, the ones that we had to disconnect the battery for so it'd shut up and quit yelling at us. There it is. I'm going to go ahead and pull the wires for the radio so it's easier to reach. And let's just be truthfully honest here, we're just really going opposite. And just putting everything back where it was, with all the screws back in place. You know, everything where it was. So I'm just going to go ahead and get these started. And then I'll tighten them down. And then don't forget about the 2 hidden up there. Just want to make sure it's all popped down in place so you can get these lined up and started really easy. Now for the radio, which is pretty simple really at this point. All we gotta do is plug this in back like it was. The antenna isn't the easiest to reach, but you can do it right there. Once it's all in, pops in. It's a lot easier putting it in than taking it out. Now I'm going to pop this piece back on, which, since some people, I have this harness here, some people have a harness. It'll be attached to something for some people, for this one it is not. So that pops right in place. Plug in the defroster. Get this close and lined up to where I can try to get this airbag light back where it's supposed to be. But this one's a little messed up. Get those ends lined up where they should be. And once everything's lined up, you need to start on the side and then get those little ends. It looks like it's got screws to take apart, but I couldn't reach them. My airbag light was already loose and hanging whenever I bought the car, so that's kind of giving me some troubles right here. Not a big deal. I'll take care of it real quick. Real quick. There. Make sure that's where it should be. We should be able to start popping it all back together. Just like that. Now that that trim's all back in and it looks like a dash again, we're done. Now obviously I said I didn't know what part I was using in the beginning because I didn't know what was wrong with that. Take it apart and figure it out. Could have been the gears, the motor, or a few other things. Turned out just a motor. I couldn't find one online to buy new. That's about a used dash or used instrument panel and went with that. Seemed like the best thing to do in my case. Now the gears, you can find them online. That's not a problem. So if you get a busted gear, because they are plastic, they do wear out, you pretty much do the same thing to change them. Not a big deal. But that's what I had to do to repair my odometer, whatever, triple meter, all that good stuff. Because the speedometer worked, which meant the vehicle speed sensor worked. And since the speedometer worked, but not the odometer or the trip meter, it had to have been something. And they're not digital gauges, they are the old style mechanical, driven by a motor because it is a sensor rather than a speedometer cable like the old days. I hope this information proved helpful. As always, thanks for watching.